And we're gonna talk about a couple different cases because the Hecox in and of itself is one piece of what I call the 1-2 punch, especially as it relates to marriage equality. It needs a 1-2 punch, but Hecox in and of itself will have reverberating impact moving forward. Um, so again, housekeeping, mute your mic. Everyone's awesome. We're just awesome. I don't even know I need to do housekeeping. LGBTQ folks are respectful and kind at their and our allies at their base. So when we do get to the Q&A, keep questions brief. Folks have a lot. Jen will help me with the ones in the chat. So if you don't feel comfortable, doing your question on screen or out loud, feel free to put in the chat, and Jen will monitor the chat. So we will talk about the little v. Hecox case, which again, oral arguments are happening right now. It's actually two cases, one out of West Virginia as well, but around trans folks being able to play sports. In particular, Hecox is a young trans girl, or was 5 years ago younger, being able to play sports. And so we'll translate that. We'll talk about its impact on LGBTQ rights moving forward. And then again, tonight there's the Pride Plans webinar. So who am I? I am an LGBTQ estate planning attorney who likes to rappel down buildings, and founded Giampolo Law Group 17 years ago. If you would have told me that 17 years ago we'd be at where we're at right now, I would not believe you at all. And with that said, there are folks of certain generations that remember, going through this in different ways. We've never had genocide cited as something that an entire group within the LGBTQ community is going through. But all to say, we have experienced tumultuous ups and downs as a community. We've survived them mainly through staying in community. And again, staying kind and leading with love. And I don't say that from a woo-woo place, but truly. And so anyways, created my law firm 17 years ago, going on 18 now, geared towards the LGBTQ community and those who love us. And I have a podcast. I also have the Caravan of Hope, which is launching in March. I'll be talking more about that on social media because a lot of folks who are in need of estate planning, name changes, gender marker changes, all the things. We added 2 cities to the tour. I'll be gone the whole month of March, 16 cities this time. Added Iowa City and a city in between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, very rural Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania city. But that'll be if you know anyone in or around those cities. We'll talk about the itinerary, all the places, and then of course LGBTQ pride planning post-election to make the estate planning documents available to folks nationwide in a cost-effective way. So the Hecox case, what it really means for LGBTQ folks. So happening today, like I said, Little v. Hecox and West Virginia case. And on the surface, it's around trans girls being able to play sports in schools. And they will decide on that. Underneath is really the future of whether or not we're going to win cases in court. We have had success in the last several years due to, and something super unsexy, but we'll talk about it. So again, the state of Idaho is framing this as a fairness matter and protecting women. So that is their argument in court. But the real question, what they're actually deciding and what they're going to have the majority of the arguments over is the level of scrutiny with which they're going to apply to this case. So again, super unsexy. If I told you that our fate hangs in the midst for generations to come, and on what level of scrutiny? And I can't stress that enough. So when a government, Idaho, a state, when a government makes a law that targets any group of people, targets a group of people differently, and then that group of people says, this is unfair, you're targeting us differently, why is that, right? Some famous cases back in the day, firefighters and you had Black folks that had dreads or an afro, and they were told they couldn't have that hairstyle as a firefighter, and or certain dress for Muslim folks. And because, flowy and could catch on fire and all of the things. And so there were laws that were targeting a group of people, and then based on who that group of people is, the level of scrutiny then comes in. Let's look at the law that this government is trying to pass, and then the group of people, and then what level of scrutiny do we apply to it, and then that'll help us come to our decision. So there are three types of levels, or three levels rather, of scrutiny. First and foremost, strict scrutiny. Highest level of protection, again, race and fundamental rights, strict scrutiny. Intermediate scrutiny, used for sex discrimination, which has been applied to trans folks previously. We sort of trans folks in particular, live and have had success in this intermediate scrutiny level. Courts, favorable Supreme Court cases have said that trans folks live and deserve intermediate scrutiny. And then rational basis is everything else. So the way that I describe these three levels in sort of an analogy, layman's terms, is imagine pole vaulting. Okay, so Olympic style pole vaulting, the highest of all thresholds, that's strict scrutiny. It's rare that you find someone who, can get over that, whatever it's called, bar. I don't even know. I should probably have thought out my analogy a little bit further. But it's rare that you have someone that can jump that. Doesn't happen often. Then intermediate scrutiny would be college level pole vaulting. Okay, middle of the ground. Everyone in the country has a college pole vaulting team. It can be done. Okay. Rational basis is like stepping over a sidewalk. Like everybody can do it. All right. You step over the sidewalk. It's super easy and ultimately very little friction. And in the big scheme of things, most laws that are governed on a rational basis are passed. So strict scrutiny, again, red flag zone. Highest level of protection. Race, national origin, basic human classifications, fundamental rights. The government goal must be compelling. The law must be narrowly tailored, as narrow as possible. Okay, no broader than is necessary. And most laws will lose when they come up against strict scrutiny. And/or it will be narrowed by the Supreme Court. And so the government must show that they have a crucial reason for the law. And again, the law must be tailored down to what they call surgical precision. So rare that laws pass strict scrutiny. Intermediate scrutiny, the government has to prove that they have a reason, at least a little. So again, we used to live in this area, we do currently. The government goal must be important. And the law, they have to demonstrate that down here, the government must have an important reason and demonstrate that the law actually fits that reason. Okay, and stereotypes aren't enough. So women aren't allowed at West Point because they're not strong enough, right? So stereotypes is not a justification or is not proving it. There needs to be some evidence, some proof. You have to be able to demonstrate a reason and demonstrate the fact that the reason and the law fit. And then rational basis, lowest level, this is the sidewalk. Is there even a halfway reasonable story for this law? The government does not need real evidence. The government does not need proof. Harmful, biased laws survive if, in this case, Idaho says we're protecting kids, saving money, we're preserving tradition. 95% of laws are upheld under rational basis. So right now and previously, courts have, like I said, treated in particular trans issues under intermediate scrutiny. So a lot of lower courts and federal courts have treated trans discrimination like sex discrimination. Okay, so they've gotten that same level of scrutiny. Us on the other, as far as when I say us, I say me, LGB, right? So lesbian, gay, bisexual issues, sexual orientation, not gender identity, but sexual orientation issues have been, they came up with sort of a, and again, this was a favorable Supreme Court that came up with this statement, but rational basis, but with a bite. So not quite did we rise up to the level of intermediate scrutiny, but rational basis with a bite. And so since, the early 2000s through 2020, with the Bostock case, which gave us nationwide employment discrimination, that is how we've gotten a lot of the big wins for trans and queer folks in the last 10 to 15 years. Now, this issue of what level of scrutiny should a law be analyzed or assessed under has never been decided by the Supreme Court. All right, so this is an issue of what they call first impression. And up until today, it has not been heard. So what could happen? What could Hecox do, and or the opinion, right, have an impact on? So if the court says that biological sex sports bans are what they call ordinary policy, this is key, trans as a status is not a protected class, and fairness and safety is a good enough reason, no serious proof is needed. Then we now have rational basis as it relates, as opposed to intermediate scrutiny. So again, this has never been decided by the Supreme Court. Lower court cases and the EEOC are the ones that have applied intermediate scrutiny as far as trans rights go. Then that means trans laws moving forward will only get rational basis. And then the states say whatever they come up with, any reasonable rational basis, right? Any law impacting trans folks would be legal moving forward. And then why do I say that this is one of the most impactful cases and opinions potentially based on how it gets decided on LGBTQ folks moving forward? Is it's not going to stay in trans sports for very long. Immediately, this will spill over into the LGBTQ community, right? So sex, gender, and sexual orientation in all of the different cases that have impacted the LGBTQ community, from Bostock, which is employment, to Obergefell, which is married, right? They've all linked sex and intermediate scrutiny. So hostile laws, any laws out there from Don't Say Gay, bathroom bills, you name it, that target sexual orientation and gender identity can then be the argument will be made that it should be decided under rational basis, and then all of these laws will survive any sort of discrimination claim. Their particular argument, again, is based in biology and tradition, which, and we'll talk about biology and tradition and how that can then, like I said, impact LGBTQ folks outside of trans folks in sports. So then we have a case of copy and paste discrimination, right? So the Hecox ruling comes down and it can only decide what's in front of them. So it will only be about Lindsay Hecox in sports. And what's fascinating too, and nobody's talking about it, for the first time that I've heard of, I'm sure it's not the only time, but for the first time that I've ever heard of, Hecox, Lindsay Hecox, tried to withdraw this case before it went to the Supreme Court just 4 months ago. And I feel like her lawyers, they've been fighting this for 5 years, since 2020. Since 2020, every step of the way. And then, basically on the eve of getting up to the Supreme Court in early September, they filed a motion to withdraw this case, because just like Sandra Munez and the Department of State v. Munez, which we'll talk about, they never thought that their case would end up standing for something that they didn't want it to stand for, right? But then as they saw cases coming down in October, the whole fall term of the Supreme Court, her lawyers were probably like, oh, and they didn't want this case to move forward. A judge said it had to move forward, and denied that motion. So how states will use a bad ruling moving forward: bathroom bans, separating biological sex for privacy and safety. It'll pass rational basis muster. The sidewalk test, pronouns, name bans. We want consistency for students and parents. Rational basis. Healthcare bans. We're protecting minors from experimental treatments. Rational basis. Adoption and foster preferences. Children do best with a mother and father. Biological. Rational basis. Marriage and parental right carve-outs. We value biological mother-father households as a state. Tennessee already has this law. It would now pass muster. So then specific as to marriage equality, this is the 1-2 punch. Now add Munez to the mix, which got decided 18 years ago. So a bad decision in Hecox plus Munez. Munez is the quiet unbundling of marriage that was decided 18 months ago. We've gone over it here. A citizen has no fundamental right to a spouse admitted to live in the same country. So Amy Coney Barrett wrote this opinion and ultimately said, yes, everybody, literally these words are in the opinion, everybody has the fundamental right to marriage. That doesn't mean that you are constitutionally guaranteed the rights inherent in marriage. And if you've been following me, you've heard me say hundreds of times now that there are 1,138 state and federal privileges tied to the institution of marriage. And so the Munez case was the quiet unbundling of marriage equality, the first time where it was said, okay, yeah, you have the fundamental right to marriage, but not necessarily that constitutional guarantee, one of those privileges. Okay, so in citizen, well, here in practice, it means you can have a marriage certificate, but not the right to live together. And things you thought that were a part of the right to marry may not be constitutionally protected after all. Sandra Munez is a lawyer, an employment discrimination lawyer out of California. I reached out to her. We've had a conversation. She obviously was in the room during oral arguments and agrees that the Supreme Court, so this was about a straight married couple, immigration case from a straight married couple. How the Supreme Court made it about marriage equality is baffling. Okay. And even Neil Gorsuch was like, we didn't have to take this case. Why did we take this case? And he said so out loud in oral arguments that he expressed his opinion that he didn't think they should be there, that the Supreme Court was overreaching. And he wrote a concurring opinion saying, I agree with the overall judgment. The man should have been deported, but we never needed to take this case. And then the dissents said, how did you make this case about marriage equality? And so I'll have her on potentially for an LQA or at least a podcast, record it, and then share it with you guys. But as the plaintiff of this case and an attorney, her take is the same as mine, that Munez will be cited moving forward, even though, again, that's absolutely not what she anticipated when she started her lawsuit 10 years ago. And yeah, it started in 2015 and ended in 2025 in February of last year. And so then the 1-2 punch, Munez plus Hecox, is a roadmap together to roll back rights. So Munez says, define rights so that they're small. Obergefell bundled, that the right to marry comes with the bundle of privileges. And Munez is the beginning of the unbundling of them. Redefine rights so that they're small. Treat core parts of marriage and family life as separate. And then rights can be denied. Apply Hecox, the worst case, right? I can't say for sure how Hecox will be decided. We'll find out in June. And I will, I talk about this a little bit later, but we're going to revisit this after the oral arguments. They're happening right now. And obviously oral arguments, when Sandra Munez's case was heard, when the Kim Davis case, there are different cases when you just hear how they're taking questions, what they're saying, it leads some guesswork. No one can ever guess what the Supreme Court's going to do, but it definitely gives you some educated thoughts. So then Hecox worst case version, apply rational basis when states take those pieces away from queer and trans folks in the name of biology and tradition. So if Hecox goes badly, Obergefell stays on the books, marriage equality becomes something on paper, and over time, not overnight, right? I've been saying this since the election that I don't envision a massive overturning of Obergefell. I'm envisioning death by 1,000 cuts, an erosion, evisceration, not a massive overturning. And this 1-2 punch is setting that up, basically. Big constitutional wins for the LGBTQ community will become rare. We won't literally lose every case, but we'll lose all the big ones. States get a green light to cloak hostility in language about fairness and safety, and marriages, kids, our identities become more vulnerable. All right, so after today, I'll review oral arguments in detail. The next LQA will be, again, about that breakdown and whatever else happens in the next couple of weeks, because you never know what can come up. But any clues about how they rule, what the questions justices asked, how they were, really that says so much. What questions the justices asked says a lot. And then what can we do from there based on my thoughts? So I will stop sharing. Oh, let me, I don't know if I had anything else. Oh, 2 slides, but they're probably just, yeah. Q&A, didn't need to show that. And then Q&A, and January 27th at noon is the next one, so 2 Tuesdays from now. And again, like I said, we may have a guest on for that one. I will see, and or a panel. So if not Sandra Munez, I'm thinking a panel of trans folks, both from a therapy perspective, corporate instruction and guidance, trans folks that have been working with corporations on their DEI and other things, but just a lived experience of where we're at right now, passport policies, what Hecox could mean, bathrooms, pronouns, names, healthcare, all of the things, but a lived experience, separate, an actual lived experience as opposed to my thoughts about it. All right. Any questions in the chat, Jen?
So far, just the
How do we
one
protect
about
ourselves?
how do we protect ourselves? Yeah.
Okay. I will get to that. Let me ask this question. Rowena?
Yeah, I've actually been tracking a lot of this. I recently retired from architecture and construction and trying to protect us. Right now we're not living, we have separate homes because she is trans, he is trans. There's a lot of complication now in I'm kind of terrified as to what's going to happen, and I want to be able, like, is it even worth it to stay in this country anymore?
What was that first part about this country? Is it
Safe? Is it at all?
yeah. No. For, as I said in post the other day and truly, believe it, the definition of genocide is trying to eradicate a group of people from existence. Doesn't have to be physical with a gun, with a machete, with a gas chamber. What's going on right now is legal, what I call legal genocide. It's also called process genocide, right? Genocide by process, genocide by law, by paperwork. So by systematically making it so that trans, gender diverse, intersex, non-binary folks don't exist on paper, then using that paper reality of their non-existence and then using that to control their lives. And so ultimately you've legally eradicated them as a group of people seen in the eyes of the law, right? And so that's what has been happening, really, even prior to January 20th, slowly but surely. But then on January 20th, fuel was put into that fire. So is it safe in this country? No. Does everyone have the privilege to leave? No. Right. And that's the reality at the end of the day. And not even safe as in safety, again, for your person, your body. Will there be camps? Will be, it's not so much that, it's the your mental health, we only have one life to live. This is it. Everybody on this call, this is not a dress rehearsal. This is the one life that we remember anyways. I would love to have some past life.
Me too.
Would love that, but I haven't. So, and we all have to do for ourselves what we need in order to make sure that we live a fulfilling life. Living in fear is not, as humans, what we were meant to do. We're expansive beings. We want to grow. We want to love. We want to be, right? Not to be a 70s child, but it is all about love. Like, that's why the 70s existed. That's what comes out of us when our ego goes away, right? So how does one have that as an other in this country? And right now, in particular, transgender, diverse, intersex, and non-binary folks. And like I said, then the LGB is right behind. And historically, authoritarian regimes and genocides, the first group are immigrants. Second group, LGBTQ. And in this case, immigrants, and then T, and then LGB.
So
right?
they're playing a long game to dismantle all of our rights. So my question now, and this is what Patrick and I have been discussing, if something should happen to one of us, where does the assets, there's a lot of complicated questions now. Right now, that's why I'm signing up to hopefully put everything in a place where it's private and not public facing. Right now, I'm also looking for a safe haven. Like, where can we go get all the essentials of life, and creating a diaspora where we can be together without the fear of this constant threat over our lives.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to Curacao. If anyone wants to come, I'm opening up a gay bar, and so you're all more than welcome.
Send the invite. I
Exactly.
actually joined the yacht club, Liberty Yacht Club, just so I can find a place, go to different places and see where I feel comfortable, because I don't want to retire in this kind of chaos anymore. I fought in the 90s and 80s on the street of Christopher Street. I'm just done fighting. I just can't. I'm exhausted at this point.
Yep. Well, so you asked a couple different things there. You asked about, assets and safe haven there, and then where if you are to leave this country, where do you go? And so I am going to I did a webinar on how to inexpensively and creatively leave the country for folks who don't necessarily have the money for a golden visa. And again, the privilege to be able to, let's necessarily buy real estate in another country, or, though for folks with privilege to do that, you have many options, right? What's happening right now has also opened a lot of asylum options. Your partner is Patrick. You mentioned Patrick. So,
Patrick,
countries
he's
like,
Filipino.
Okay. So, very welcoming countries. So as far as Ireland, Norway, Canada, Spain is a great one, the Netherlands. So there are countries that have since the election. Norway was thinking about it. There's still, but I mean, you can technically apply for asylum to any country. They have the choice whether or not, but some countries were actively promoting it. Please, if you're LGBTQ living in the United States, particularly trans, gender diverse, non-binary, you have a place here. We welcome you. Ireland is particularly sought after because it's English, right? I have the privilege of speaking French, having been, grown up in Quebec. So not everybody can easily just wake up, pick up, and go to a Spanish-speaking country and then make money and do their things. Different countries either want you to be a digital nomad, you work for yourself. Others will take you as a W-2 as long as you can work remotely. And so again, we're going to do another webinar just on countries. What are the options? What are the requirements for those countries? This is the first time in US history that there's a mass exodus of Americans with 401ks and, like homes and assets, to your point, right? So, and even if, some of you on this call were coming to me 2 years ago, everything is puppies and babies and roses and all of the things. And you're like, I'm thinking of retiring in, the Netherlands. What do I do as far as estate planning, right? There's always your estate planning here in the United States that you need that will govern your foothold here. So you need the trust, you need, all of the things here in the United States. Anytime, and then you travel the world, as long as when you finally become a permanent citizen or a citizen, and in some countries a resident, it really depends on where you are, then you need the estate planning version, the Amsterdam version of me, right? The Denmark version of me. And then you do your estate planning for that country, and we make sure that the two talk. I had a client, he worked for IKEA right after the election. He asked to be transferred to Sweden. You literally throw a rock, you hit Denmark. There's a bridge, and poof, you go over the bridge and you're in Denmark. And so he decided on Denmark. And it was the first time I dealt with Denmark as a country as far as estate planning goes, international estate planning. And he signed his documents 12 years prior, and he had to re-sign his US-based estate planning documents right before signing the Danish ones. Same day, in prior time. And the witnesses had to note that the US one was signed first and then the Danish one, or else there would have been international probate, the green lines, Ghostbusters would have, imploded. So all to say, you need your US-based estate planning documents as a US citizen, and especially if you're going to leave a foothold here. And then depending on where you end up and how long you're going to be gone, and if you're going to defect, and so many variables.
The very idea of defecting, but my last question, as far as helping all of our community, is that what if there's a way to create a community hub on these countries that are safe for us, so that people who cannot afford it can at least find some reprieve as a group, so that we make it easier for me and everybody else to just transfer to a place where they can live out their retirement without fear of a hammer.
So in that last webinar, and I shared some of those resources, there are international communities that are either queer or queer affirming, that are super inexpensive, like 50 euros a month. You go, you live, they're called intentional communities. And so they exist. Jen, I don't know if you have that resource that we can put in the chat, but also and put this in the chat. Jen's just going to put all these resources. I created a different online community off of social called, it's through the platform School, SKOOL, private community, and all of the resources are right there. So a lot of questions have been answered, not just, what, like LQAs, an entire LQA dedicated to the Citizenship Act, dedicated to getting out of this country, dedicated, but if you weren't on that one, you didn't get it. So School is a hub of all of, the PowerPoint I just went over will live there. Anything I've ever put together will be there in one spot, as far as old replays, all the things, and to your point, community, like true community. There's already a coffee date happening in Phoenix or Scottsdale, between two of the members. So join the School community. And I have content that are behind paywalls, like law.com. You have to pay and, and have a subscription to law.com. So a lot of folks don't get my content. I'm not allowed to publish it elsewhere, but since it's a private community and not going out to the world, I feel safe that I'm not violating my contract by sharing it with you guys. So folks in that community will get more exclusive content. I'm in there in the morning just saying hi and, posted a picture of myself making a gingerbread man house or whatever they're called. Feel free to join that and you'll be able to get the, and I ask everybody, what is not there that you do want to see? And then let's focus 2026 on creating those things. All right. And thank you for those questions. They were applicable to everyone. How do we protect ourselves? For 17 years and for 50 years prior to that and 100 years, the inseparable, impenetrable line of defense that LGBTQ folks have been using is estate planning. You fight legal genocide with legal documentation. They're trying to say you don't exist. You paper that up and you make sure that your existence is in effect and is on paper. Right? So, and as far as estate planning generally, from recreating marriages, protecting our chosen family, friends that are close like family and or our loved ones that we're not married to, right? Our domestic partners, our pets. And that was the one thing I didn't, when I did the last webinar on where to defect to, someone emailed me immediately and was like, you didn't mention if any of those countries were pet friendly or what the quarantine situation. I was like, how did I forget that? Like, so if nothing else, we need to redo on that one. And there will be a whole section on which countries are easiest to get to with your animals. So estate planning has for decades been what we use as our impenetrable, inseparable line of defense. If your life is like a castle, the revocable living trust is a moat around that castle. Last will and testaments are public information. You want to be weird? You can go to City Hall in the town in which you live and check everybody's wills. Okay, public information, your revocable trust, confidential. Nobody sees it. It doesn't get probated. All of the things. Everything that's in here is on lock. You can call it something other than your name. I have celebrities who don't want anyone to know in the small town of Fire Island that they own something there. Their name's not on their deed. I have trans folks who sought asylum in this country who don't want their name on survivors of domestic violence, who don't want their names on their next deed. Confidentiality, on lock. Okay, so and again, there's more documents and post-election with ICE workshops with restaurant owners who wanted to protect their undocumented workers. The one document that we gave everybody 5 of, the durable power of attorney. There is nothing more powerful. They get detained and they're gone for 9 months. Nobody can talk to them. Who's paying their mortgage? Right? They come out, their lease is terminated, their stuff is thrown away. The durable power of attorney, super, super helpful. Why I love contracts. This is one that I shrink down, laminate. You hold on to one another. It's around hospital visitation. Even if everything were puppies and babies and roses in this country, you're only considered married in 37 countries out of 195 that fly a flag. You don't have that automatic right to visitation in Italy, which is now super homophobic, right? So why I love contracts generally is you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to reason with anyone. You don't have to convince anyone. You just get to do the thing. And the durable power of attorney is the doer of all things. There is nothing, and especially for trans folks, gender diverse, intersex, non-binary folks, healthcare powers of attorney, an advocate for you with your gender affirming care riders that are specific to you, mental health care powers of attorney, which are separate from healthcare powers of attorney, an additional rider, right? Having all of that paperwork to make sure that what you need is written down. I got passionate around this topic 20 years ago with the Terry Schiavo case. Straight married cis couple. He was not her healthcare power of attorney. She did not have an advance directive. It wasn't in writing. And it dawned on me then, if a straight married couple can't effectuate the wishes that they know they have for one another because it's not in writing, what makes us think we have a leg to stand on? Right? So at this time of legal erasure, of erasing people legally on paper, making sure that all of that documentation, what you know you want and need, is in writing, and that you have the most trusted folks around you and available to be able to advocate for you if and when no one else can. Any other question? Is it safe for someone with gender X? So yes and no. Safe, yes. Especially if you've done nothing. Could something happen? So I've been getting a lot of emails. They've decreased in the last month, honestly, but I think it's because folks have stopped traveling as much, like that it became real, and gender diverse and non-binary trans folks stopped traveling as much. But I was getting emails weekly with people that were being detained. You can only be detained for no reason for 6 hours. But I've had a lot of folks have that happen to them for no reason. I do these travel letters. It's a small enough group. Your LQA folks, I'll tell you. It's not something I would say on social media because everybody would reach out. But I do letters. I don't know that they would be of assistance in the moment, so I don't charge for them. But it's a letter that says that I have been retained by Caitlin for the purposes of travel from, New Jersey, let's say Jersey City, to Reykjavik, Delta flight 1732, leaving at returning January 20th on flight XX, and should anything happen, reach out. So it's when you're detained, you have no due process. Okay, you have no due process when you're detained. You don't have a phone call. Everybody was asking me for a business card, or can I say that you're my lawyer? Like, you have no due process. It doesn't matter. But when the 70s and 60s, when there were protests and we didn't have cell phones or beepers or any way to get in touch with anybody, when we would go out and protest, folks would, in advance, knowing they were protesting that day, go to their criminal defense attorney and get a letter saying, I have retained so-and-so. So that way, that was already the phone call. And then they had to be treated as though there was a lawyer in the room before the lawyer showed up. And so it was like having a lawyer in your pocket kind of thing. So out of all of the letters that I've written for folks, no one has been detained. No one has gotten taken out of line. One woman did look at it and sort of looked at the person, looked back at the letter, looked at the person, looked back at the letter. You could tell she was thinking, do I want to get myself involved in whatever this might be? Scoffed and threw the letter at him. The very next person that used the letter, the woman looked at it, got out of her little box, came around, and was in tears and hugged him and said, I'm sorry you have to do this. Two very, very different experiences. A lot of folks, it just hasn't been asked for. And so no one, it hasn't happened that someone's been detained and that I've gotten a phone call. Other things that tips in travel, have an ICE person. I can't say that anymore without, have an in case of emergency person. And use it. So you are, especially arrival, you're not going to have any issues getting to Reykjavik. It's getting home. That's the hard part. It's getting through U.S. Border Patrol. Okay. So then upon arrival, let's say you land at 7:30. Tell your person that you will text them no later than 8:45. 7:30 to 8:30, no matter how long the line is. And, you're out of that customs area, able to use your phone by an hour and 15 minutes, definitely. And say, I will text you, my flight arrives at this time. I'll let you know that I'm safe at this time. And then if 2 hours goes by, then we know, because again, you don't get the phone call. You don't get a phone call. So someone needs to know that something happened to you. X, I'm worried about X more so in everyday life. You're depending on whether you travel a lot, for work and you're constantly up against TSA folks, not necessarily internationally, but just traveling a lot, you're driving 12 hours and you get a flat tire at 2 a.m. in Tennessee and the cop wants to mess with you. Oh, X. Which holding cell am I going to put you in? You know, like only you know your threshold for safety. I always tell folks you are the highest authority on you. You know your threshold for safety. You know the level of privilege that you walk around in the world with. And you know how much you travel and all of the things, right? So you have to make the best and safest decision for you, weighing all of those factors. But a lot of states post-election no longer permit X, and I would hate for you to be in a state that doesn't permit X and something happens. Valid question. Could this go to states' rights like abortion did? Absolutely. I mean, marriage will, I don't know when you say this, marriage, I see going that route. And then again, the 1-2 punch of the Hecox rational basis, right? Because then there's the Respect for Marriage Act. Everybody always asks me, well, okay, but if Obergefell gets overturned, we have the Respect for Marriage Act. Doesn't that mean full faith and credit and all the things? And, you know, it was enacted the minute Roe v. Wade, abortion, was overturned because they saw the writing on the wall. Okay, you're coming for marriage equality. We'll enact the Respect for Marriage Act. But then if the Hecox case comes about, then we have, rational basis. But we have this law where we want to do X, Y, Z. So again, how do we skirt around it? They don't have the numbers to repeal the Respect for Marriage Act. But just like everything else, they don't play by proper channels. So how do they eviscerate the Respect for Marriage Act while leaving it in effect? How do they get around it? How these rulings could already impact. We don't know. I mean, nobody knows. Nobody even knows if Hecox is going to go this way. But a couple of different ways. Either folks are grandfathered in. I always tell people, you know, safely with a prenup, hedge your bets. And if you're not, get married. There are 1,138 state and federal privileges tied to the institution of marriage. I say that being Canadian, there are 4. I come from a long line of straight people that never got married because there's no point. Okay. So in the 70s, there were what they called lavender marriages, where lesbians and gay men would get married. It's like, you're a man, I'm a woman. I guess we could do this marriage thing, but you do you and I'll do me, but we'll get those 1,138. Those were the lavender marriages. So if nothing else, as long as it's safely with the prenup, I believe everybody should have a prenup 10 years ago, 5 years ago, now, all the, at the end of the day, there is something in writing that we will read if you get divorced. And it's either you wrote it or the state in which you live in wrote it. And the divorce code is meant for everyone in the state in which you live in, therefore meant for no one. You're fitting a circle into a square peg every time a couple gets divorced. That's why nobody is happy, right? Nobody loves their divorce lawyer. No one's like, I can't wait to see her again. That's why I don't do contested divorces. I only do uncontested divorces because I focus on premarital and postnuptial agreements. And the majority of them are super subpar. I have a 17-point checklist that I walk folks through. 17. Most prenups say what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, what's joint is joint. Whoop-de-doo. Who's getting the chihuahua? Better be me. Who moves out? Who stays? That's what cops are called for. Like, you can't change the locks. Who's staying? Who's leaving? Who gets the house? They're just like health insurance, keeping that status quo. There's so many aspects that go untouched in your everyday prenup. Anyways, Chris, I'll get to your question. One is everybody grandfathered in will be grandfathered in. The other, when we got marriage equality, they allowed us to retroactively go back 3 years. 3 years when we filed taxes to amend 3 years worth of tax returns and get all of the benefits that we would have gotten if we had filed married filing joint. You know, there are folks that are saying, oh, marriage equality will never go away. It would be such an administrative nightmare. How would they do it? They gave us marriage equality and they allowed every couple to amend 3 years worth of tax returns and cut checks. I had one client who took a 1 year sabbatical and went around the world with $89,000 they got from the government. And they're like, thank you. Right? So administratively, they've done difficult things. That was for us. I have no qualms that this particular administration would want to do difficult things against, right? So if they're smart, they don't blow up their world and their IRS, but they say, listen, you have 3 years from today to get your house in order. So marriage equality goes away right now. You're married all of 2026. You're married all of 2027. And then 12/31 of 28, like basically, or 1/1 rather of 29, giving you all of 28. Because if you're married one day, you're married 365. Okay, the other 364. So I envision them doing something like that. That would be smart. I don't know if they would actually like think it through. But there are things that they could do. And then there's again the not overturning of Obergefell, right? Now this is important. This is your marriage certificate, right? You went and you got a marriage certificate. Why did you? Because of the 1,138 state and federal privileges tied to it. After Munez, we're down to 7. A Hecox Munez combo, who knows? So at the end of the day, but constitutionally, the Constitution says if you entered into a marriage and it was valid when you entered into, it can't be taken away. So the government can't technically do this. But the analogy that I use is your marriage right now is a steak knife. This is the Cutco of all steak knives. 1,138 serrated edges. You have the sharpest of all steak knives. And then if we lose the federal benefits associated, it's not as sharp. If we lose the state rights associated, you have a butter knife. But nobody can take away your knife. But it's whether or not we go from a steak knife of all steak knives to a butter knife. Okay. I have trouble getting recognized as married. No. Nope. You should. And again, I don't know what state you're in, so I say that with a caveat. Is it safe anywhere else? With what's been happening in Venezuela and so that's valid. That's valid. I am not looking at Europe. I feel like we'll be fleeing there in, 5 to 10 years, if that. And there are countries that are problematic there. And so, at the end of the day, a country where laws, right, like Curacao, this little island I keep talking about, it's super Catholic, 80% Catholic, but the good kind of Catholic, like the ones that wash your feet and like, don't throw stones and things like that, right? Like the real ones, okay? And so, but it's a Dutch country. And so while marriage equality, like the island of Curacao in and of itself, didn't pass marriage equality because it's a Dutch country, marriage is recognized there. And like I said, super, super safe and happy and all of the things. So you're looking, and I will say this, I've come to find out in all of my research that it's also not necessarily country-based, city-based, the community, right? The country part are the laws, but there could be issues in that particular country, but where do you live? Right? I live in Pennsylvania, technically red state, but Philadelphia's HRC's #1 rated, best city for LGBTQ folks in the city, tied 8 ways and for 12 years running. I live in a haven within a hell. I think I see like 2 straight people a week. Okay, like so, but like I'm in Pennsylvania, right? So it's it's really, and you know, I say this, but it's true. It's up to your threshold for safety, your level of privilege in the world, where you feel comfortable. Have you traveled a lot? I've lived in, you know, multiple countries. And so I feel safe in places that other folks don't deem safe. It's so subjective. I lived in Tanzania where it's illegal to be LGBTQ and befriended, you know, folks from Tanzania that were LGBTQ. Um, and they didn't want to be friends with me because being friends with an out lesbian would out them. And they're like, I can't be seen with you, you know, and it didn't dawn on me. So it's like, just you also being an expat will have a different level of privilege in whatever country you end up in. Yeah, golden visas, we can talk about that. I mean, Renee Goods's impact won't have an impact on what we're talking about right now. It's more of a community impact and a resistance impact. And you know, this is Gestapo, and you know, the days of warning folks about what's to come are over. Right? January or November 6th, 7th, 8th, December, after January 20th, a lot of my videos were about what's to come, what may come. And now it's like, it's here. We're here. And if anything, Renee Good shows that, and the videos and what's happening all over is showing that. So it's more about what does it wake up in you that may not already be awake. Huh. You know, again, that is when do we know when the time to go? I always say when shit's on fire is not the time to get your go bag ready. Okay. Something else too to do. I meant to mention this when is it Rowena? I meant to mention this when you were talking about assets. Cryptocurrency. A lot of people are opening up foreign banks. Don't do that. Don't open up a bank in a foreign country. Triggers all kinds of things. But crypto, USDC, you don't have to invest in Bitcoin. There's no, you know, you won't get a link from me to invest in some sort of penny coin or anything. But solid stable coin, USDC, and I'm blanking on the other stable coin, but just taking money and putting it up in the cloud, zero investment upside, zero downside, and then you end up where you're going and then you pull it down. But
Okay,
you haven't.
I'm sorry, I just wanted
Yes.
to speak on that. Technically, I literally was gonna pull all the money out of my bank and stick it in my mattress because at this point, I don't know what they're gonna confiscate it or anything. As a South American in Guyana, we lived through a similar situation where we had a president named Burnham who declared himself executive president, and these ICE agent is similar to the guerrilla, the paramilitary, where he used to put himself in power. So I try to tell people this is like a classic takeover that people are not seeing. I know I don't want to scare people, but we ended up getting rid of him, but it took a revolution to do that. So to me, I don't want to go, I just want peace and quiet at this point. I'm done fighting. So where do I put my money? Like, where can I move my money? I would love to move my money to Guyana, but it's not a stable government right now.
Right.
So,
Yeah, no, and for folks who don't have a touch point in a foreign government, you don't want to open up an account and then put like $400,000 into a foreign account that you have no jurisdiction, no touch point that will trigger, you know, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act things that you don't want to trigger. So just what I said, you know, state coin base, super easy to open. You verify your identity, stable coin, can't lose it, won't make any money, right? You may be making money on interest in your bank account and all of the things, but it's there and then accessible no matter where you are in the world. When you've decided which country you're gonna, you know, end up in, and then you pull it down. So that is an option for putting money somewhere. And then there's just, you know, not in a traditional bank, but actually investing it, right? There, you know, but when is the time to go? You need to know that for you. Also knowing what assets you have, Do you need to sell some properties? A lot of folks are coming to me with a few rentals. They're overexposed. They have too much real estate and they want to sell it before, the economy collapses and there's guerrilla warfare. So it's like, what is your financial situation? What needs to be figured out? You don't want to take a wash and a bloodbath on taxes by selling. You can do 1031 exchanges. It's so very specific. And then expats have to decide on citizenship. It's been a while since I've looked into where that law is, the Exclusive Citizenship Act. I did something on it, but it was in committee actively. Last I looked at it in November, end of November. And so I'll make a note to just see where that is in committee. Oh, shoot. Sorry, guys, it's late. Let me see. Yeah, so I want to see all of you in school. Jen, drop the link down in school. Curacao, property ownership is awesome. It's like $200 and some odd $1,000 for the visa. You invest in their stock market, you buy property, or you open up a business. So you have 3 ways in which you can invest, as opposed to Portugal, where you have to give them $500,000 for like nothing. All right, you're actually going to make money. The Curacao is where Aruba was 15 years ago. Real estate is how I've made money. I always buy, and when nobody else wants to go, nobody has heard of Curacao, really. I mean, it's starting. Now it's Canada's #1 place to vacation and taking over Cuba. So literally, but that's 2025, it became that. So it's just on the cusp of becoming known for something other than being a blue liquor that nobody can pronounce. And real estate is affordable. And like I said, it's super cute. It's super, like, the gays have taken it over. Just Google Curacao and you'll see the facade. It's rainbow. And so when the gays came in on cruises, I feel like they saw the rainbow facade and they're like, oh, we like you. We're going to adopt Curacao. And even though it's 80% Catholic, we've taken it over. So yeah, join us in school. I have a super busy day today, but I'll accept everyone and then introduce yourself to the community. And like I said, we'll be able to get more questions asked there so that these LQAs are that much more about what you want to have happen. Okay. All right. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Lovely to see you. High fives. And I'll see you on the 27th and in school. All right. Bye, guys. Bye, Nat and Lisa.